It was the summer of 2008, and I was 16 years old, living in a quiet, suburban neighborhood where nothing exciting ever happened. My backyard was your typical suburban setup. A patchy lawn, a rusty swing set that squeaked like it was haunted, and a dense line of trees separating our property from the woods. It was the kind of place where you'd expect to find kids playing tag or parents barbecuing, not whatever happened that summer. My family consisted of my parents, my little sister Emily, and our dog, Max. Max was a golden retriever with more bark than bite. And Emily was your typical 8-year-old, imaginative, loud, and always getting into trouble. As for me, I was just your average teenager trying to survive the boredom of summer break. "This place is so boring," I muttered to myself one afternoon, kicking a rock across the yard. "Nothing exciting ever happens here." Famous last words. It started small. Max began barking at nothing in the middle of the night, his hackles raised like he'd seen a ghost. At first, I thought it was just raccoons or maybe a stray cat, but then I found the footprints. They were in the garden, too big to be human, but too small to be an animal. The prints were deep, like whatever made them was heavy, and they led straight to the edge of the woods. "Probably just a deer," I told myself, trying to ignore the unease creeping up my spine. Then Emily started talking about the figure. "Alex, there's a man in the woods," she said one day, her voice trembling. "He watches me when I play on the swing set." I brushed it off. "It's just your imagination, Em. There's no one out there." But deep down, I wasn't so sure. The first time I saw it, I was out late, trying to fix the broken porch light. The sun had set, and the backyard was bathed in shadows. I was fumbling with a screwdriver when I heard it. A low, guttural growl coming from the trees. My heart skipped a beat. I shone my flashlight into the woods, and there it was. A hunched, humanoid figure with glowing eyes, crouched in the shadows. It was tall, too tall, and its limbs were unnaturally long. I froze. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment I couldn't move. Then I blinked, and it was gone. "What the hell was that?" I whispered, my hands shaking. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but I knew what I'd seen, and I knew it wasn't nothing. After that night, things got worse. Objects started going missing from the yard. A garden hose, a lawn chair, Emily's favorite toy. They'd reappear days later in strange places, like the roof or the middle of the woods. The trees seemed to move closer to the house, their branches clawing at the windows like they were alive. One night, I woke up to find muddy handprints on the glass, as if something had been trying to get in. "Mom, Dad, you have to believe me," I said, showing them the handprints. "It's probably just a prank," my dad said, shrugging it off. But I knew better. I started digging into the history of our property, spending hours at the library and scrolling through old newspaper archives. That's when I found it. Our house was built on land that once belonged to an old farm. The farmer, a man named Samuel Hargrove, had disappeared under mysterious circumstances in the 1950s. Rumors swirled that he'd dabbled in dark rituals, trying to summon something from beyond. The townsfolk had avoided the land for decades, until a developer bought it and built our neighborhood. "This can't be a coincidence," I muttered, staring at the old black and white photo of Samuel Hargrove. I teamed up with my best friend Mia and our neighbor, Mr. Thompson, an elderly man who'd lived in the neighborhood for decades. Together, we pieced together the truth. Samuel's spirit was trapped on the land, and it had been feeding on the fear of anyone who lived here. "It's not just a ghost," Mr. Thompson said, his voice grave. "It's something worse. Something that doesn't belong in this world." We devised a plan to confront the entity and banish it from the land. Using Samuel's old journals, we gathered supplies: salt, iron, and a ritual that might send the creature back to where it came from. "This is either going to work, or we're all going to die," I said, trying to lighten the mood. Mia rolled her eyes. "Your optimism is inspiring." The night of the ritual, a violent summer storm hit. The power went out, plunging the house into darkness. The backyard became a battleground as the entity began to manifest, its glowing eyes piercing through the rain. "This is it," I said, gripping the ritual book. "Let's end this." The entity appeared in its true form, a grotesque, shifting mass of shadows and teeth. We fought back with everything we had, chanting the ritual and throwing salt and iron at the creature. It was relentless, its claws slashing through the air as it lunged at us. In a desperate attempt to banish the entity, Mr. Thompson stepped forward, completing the ritual himself. "Take care of them," he said, looking at me and Mia. The entity let out a deafening roar as it was pulled back into the void, but not before taking Mr. Thompson with it. The storm passed, and the backyard was quiet once more. My parents were shaken, but relieved that the disturbances had stopped. I sat on the porch, staring at the trees, grappling with the loss of Mr. Thompson and the lingering sense of unease. Years later, I returned to my childhood home, sitting on the porch as I recounted the story to a group of friends. "It's quiet now," I said, looking out at the backyard. "But sometimes I still feel like something's out there, watching." As I finished my story, I noticed a familiar shadow in the trees, a hunched figure with glowing eyes, watching from the darkness.